Something satisfying just happened in a realm you do not have access to. A file was closed in the courts of heaven, not a prayer request, not a petition, a case. Your case, the one the enemy has been building against your name since before you understood what your name carried. He presented every failure, every relapse, every midnight breakdown, every time you said never again and did it again. He stacked the evidence high. He called witnesses, your ex, your former boss, the version of you that existed at 23 with no direction and too much pride to ask for help. He thought the verdict was sealed, but then the judge stood, and when God stands in a courtroom, every accusation goes silent. The ruling came back one word: qualified. Not because your record was clean, because your assignment was too important to be cancelled by your history. That is not poetry. That is a legal event that happened in the spirit this week, and you felt it. You just did not know what to call it. Let me tell you what you called it instead. You called it a random Tuesday, where you suddenly stopped caring about something that used to own you. You called it a quiet Thursday, where you deleted a name from your phone and felt nothing. No grief, no nostalgia, just a clean surgical release that confused even you. You called it insomnia, when you woke up at 3:14 in the morning with your chest tight and your mind sharp and a strange certainty that something was ending and something else was being born in the same breath. You called it stress. You called it burnout. You called it getting older. But heaven called it activation. The angels did not applaud because you did something spectacular. They applauded because you did something precise. You made a move so aligned with your original design that it sent a frequency into the unseen that rearranged assignments, closed portals, and forced every demon monitoring your trajectory to file a new report. The report said the same thing. The target is no longer asleep. I need you to stay with me. Do not leave this message early, because in the next few minutes, I am going to name the specific lie that has been operating as the operating system of your self-doubt. I am going to show you how the enemy has been using your own intelligence against you, and before this message ends, I am going to hand you a declaration that does not just inspire you. It rewrites the spiritual contract over your life, but you have to stay. The version of you that has been praying for clarity, the one that has been whispering, God, if you are real, show me what I am supposed to do. That version of you needs to hear every word that follows. If you leave now, you leave before the surgery is complete, and a half-open wound is more dangerous than one that was never touched. Here is what I know about your last 90 days. The pressure has not been normal. This has not been regular life difficulty. This has been targeted, systematic, intelligent. You have felt resistance on every side. Not the kind that comes from laziness or poor decisions. The kind that comes from something unseen calculating your next move and placing obstacles in the exact coordinates of your breakthrough. Maybe your finances tightened right when you were about to invest in yourself. Maybe a relationship that was supposed to support you suddenly became the thing draining you. Maybe you watch someone with half your gifting and none of your depth get the promotion, the platform, the recognition that you have been quietly building toward for years. And that comparison did not just sting, it whispered something lethal. Maybe you are not as chosen as you thought. Maybe you missed your window. Maybe the people who made it were always the real ones, and you were just the understudy who believed her own audition tape. I need to name that for what it is. That is not reflection. That is a coordinated psychological operation running on spiritual software. The enemy does not waste that level of precision on people who are not dangerous to his kingdom. He does not send targeted warfare to someone whose purpose is small. The intensity of what you have been walking through is not evidence that you are failing. It is evidence that you are close, so close that darkness had to deploy its most sophisticated weapon. Not sickness, not poverty, not even betrayal. His most sophisticated weapon is reinterpretation. He is not trying to destroy your life. He is trying to make you misread it. He needs you to look at your history and see only wreckage. He needs you to look at your waiting season and see only waste. Because if you ever look at those same seasons through heaven's lens and see the forge, the refinery, the surgical theater where God was cutting away everything that would have collapsed under the weight of where you are going, the enemy loses all jurisdiction over your next chapter. Think about Elijah. After the fire fell on Mount Carmel, after 450 false prophets were exposed, after the sky tore open and consumed the sacrifice and the stones and the water in the trench, Jezebel sent one message, one whisper, and that single whisper drove the most powerful prophet on earth into the wilderness, asking God to let him die. Not before the victory, after it. The attack came at the highest point. That is not coincidence. That is strategy. The enemy waits for your moment of breakthrough and then sends one thought, one conversation, one memory designed to convince you that the victory was a fluke and the real you is the one lying under the tree wanting to quit. He has been running the same operation on you this week, not with swords and spears, with thoughts dressed in your own voice. You are not equipped for this. You are too inconsistent. Real warriors do not look like you. He has been prosecuting you inside your own mind, using evidence you thought only you had access to. But listen to what God did not do when Elijah collapsed under that broom tree. He did not rebuke him. He did not pull up his browser history of failures. He did not say, "How dare you rest after what I just did through you." He sent an angel with bread and water. He let him sleep. And then he asked one question with enough tenderness to melt iron. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" That was not a rebuke. That was God saying, "You have forgotten your own story. Let me remind you of the 7,000 who have not bowed. Let me remind you that you were never as isolated as the enemy needed you to believe." And that is what this message is. A reminder, because the version of you that crawled into this moment exhausted and doubting is not the version heaven sees. Heaven sees the one who survived every season that was engineered to end you, and is still breathing, still pressing, still refusing to let go of something you cannot even fully articulate yet. That stubbornness is not a personality flaw, it is a spiritual signature, and heaven recognizes it. Now let me show you what your last move actually did, because you have been grading your own life with a rubric the enemy designed. You chose alignment over applause, and that single shift restructured your entire spiritual architecture. There is a rare frequency that activates when you stop performing for an audience that was never assigned to evaluate you. You felt it the moment you quit explaining your decisions to people who only respected the version of you they could control. You stopped auditioning for rooms that were never built for your dimensions. Maybe you walked away from a career that looked impressive on LinkedIn, but felt like dying slowly under fluorescent lights. Maybe you ended a friendship that everyone envied from the outside, but was quietly eroding your capacity to trust your own judgment. Maybe you stopped curating a version of your life that made strangers comfortable while making you hollow. That was not a breakdown. That was a GPS recalibration at the deepest level of your identity. Heaven does not stand for popularity, it stands for precision. And the moment you chose what was true over what was trending, you entered a frequency that only the authentic survive in. You stopped negotiating with what was sent to finish you. For years you sat across the table from dysfunction and called it complexity. You gave explanations to people who collected your vulnerability like ammunition. You offered loyalty to systems that only knew how to extract. You called it love when heaven called it a hostage situation. Then something snapped inside you, not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, like a dislocated bone resetting itself after so long out of place that you had forgotten what alignment felt like. You stopped offering peace treaties to things that were dispatched as assignments against your sanity. You stopped reasoning with patterns that had proven 1,000 times they would not change. The moment you decided that walking away was not quitting but graduating, heaven recorded it as deliverance. The enemy did not lose power because you fought harder. He lost power because you stopped attending the negotiation. You left the table, and every chain attached to that seat broke the second you stood up. You did not just survive the storm. You reverse-engineered it. Most people white-knuckle their way through pain and call it faith. You did something rarer. You sat inside the wreckage and started reading the schematics. You realized the chaos had a curriculum. The betrayal was not random cruelty. It was advanced discernment training. The financial drought was not punishment. It was a masterclass in trusting a provider you cannot invoice. The loneliness was not abandonment. It was God clearing the room so you could hear instructions that crowds would have drowned out. You stopped begging for rescue and started taking notes. Angels stood because you did not waste your suffering. You composted it. You turned confusion into curriculum, wounds into doctoral research, and endurance into a degree that no institution on earth can grant. Those who only endure storms stay bitter. Those who study them become architects. You built something with the very materials that were thrown at you to cause destruction. That is divine engineering, and heaven has never once seen it and stayed seated. If something in your spirit just confirmed what your mind has been resisting, I need you to do something right now. Hit the like button, not as engagement, as agreement. A spiritual cosign that says, I see what God is doing and I refuse to stay blind to it any longer. Then leave a comment. Tell me the specific lie you are done negotiating with. Write it out. Drag it into the open, because the enemy's entire infrastructure depends on operating in disguise. He does not attack from the front. He embeds himself in your inner monologue and whispers accusations in first person so you think the doubt is yours. But the instant you identify the source, you revoke its security clearance to your mind. Now I need to take you somewhere uncomfortable, because what I am about to say next is the part of this message that most people will resist. And the ones who resist it the hardest are usually the ones standing closest to their breakthrough. Some of what you have been calling spiritual warfare is actually spiritual avoidance. Not all of it. The warfare is real. The enemy is real. The attacks are documented in your sleepless nights and your unexplained heaviness, and the way relationships imploded at surgically precise moments. But underneath that warfare, there is a layer that belongs entirely to you. A layer that fasting cannot reach and prayer alone cannot unlock, because it is not a demonic stronghold. It is a decision you have been postponing. There is a belief you have been guarding like a wounded animal protects a broken limb, a silent agreement you signed with yourself during your worst season. Maybe after the last time you went all in and got obliterated. Maybe after the divorce. Maybe after the business collapsed. Maybe after you opened your heart completely and someone used that access to devastate you in ways you are still recovering from. The agreement says it is safer to live in almost ready, almost healed, almost stepping into the calling, because almost means you never have to discover what happens if you give everything you have and the outcome still breaks you. Almost is a padded cell dressed up as wisdom. It feels like patience, but it functions as a life sentence. You have been standing at the doorway of your own destiny, fully armed but refusing to cross the threshold, not because the enemy is blocking you, because your nervous system made a covenant with caution that your spirit never co-signed. And here is what makes this so dangerous. You can pray against the enemy all day, but if the lock is on your side of the door, no amount of spiritual warfare will open it. Only honesty will. Only sitting with the question that your soul has been dodging. What am I protecting that God has already asked me to release? Maybe it is the need to be fully ready before you act, That is perfectionism wearing a prayer shawl. Maybe it is the fear that stepping into your full visibility will cost you the relationships that defined you through your smallness. Maybe it is the visceral memory that the last time you were truly seen, you were truly hurt, and your body decided that hiddenness was the only safe address. Those fears are not irrational. They were forged in real fire, but they are now operating as the final barrier between you and everything heaven spent decades constructing. Think about what David did. He did not wait until his hands stopped shaking. He picked up the stone while his fingers were still trembling and ran toward the giant with terror still pumping in his veins. But here is what every sermon skips. David did not run because he was fearless. He ran because he understood something about divine timing that most people will die without learning. The window between readiness and action is razor thin. Hesitation does not preserve the opportunity, it buries it. The fear was never designed to leave before the movement. It was designed to burn off during the velocity of obedience. Each step toward Goliath was a step away from the shepherd boy. The old David died somewhere between the sling and the impact. The king was born in the momentum of a yes that his body did not agree with, but his spirit refused to delay. Your moment is identical. The cautious version of you that has been rehearsing readiness instead of walking in it, that version does not get to cross this line. It dies here, so the commissioned version can finally breathe. You proved that obedience outranks talent. The world promotes ability. Heaven promotes availability. Your yes did not come from a place of comfort or comprehension. It came from a depth in your spirit where logic cannot reach and fear cannot override. You said yes when every financial model said wait. You followed a direction that had no visible map, no guaranteed outcome, and no safety net made of human opinion. That is not recklessness. That is the frequency that makes the angelic realm pause and pay attention. It was not your resume that shook principalities. It was your willingness to move without seeing the full staircase. You obeyed when it cost your reputation, when it bewildered your family, when the people closest to you started treating you like a cautionary tale instead of a pioneer. That distance between what they see and what heaven said is the exact space where calling gets tested and destiny gets forged. You became the answer you spent years begging for. There came a moment unremarkable to anyone watching when you stopped asking God to send help and realized the help had been standing in your mirror the entire time. You were not waiting for a rescuer. You were the rescue, walking around in ordinary clothes, wondering why deliverance was delayed, while heaven was wondering why you had not deployed. The instant you stopped saying, "When will it arrive?" and started saying, "It has been in me this whole time," the atmosphere cracked. You did not receive a miracle. You remembered you were one, designed before your first heartbeat, loaded with solutions before you ever encountered the problems they were built to resolve. Your awakening was not new revelation. It was recovered identity. And when a chosen one remembers what they carry, every assignment against their name gets reclassified from active threat to failed operation. Everything you walked through was engineering you for this exact second. Every hidden act of faithfulness, every prayer whispered into a ceiling that felt like concrete, every night you chose to stay when leaving made more logical sense, every time you chose stillness over retaliation, truth over convenience, purpose over the dopamine of public approval, heaven stamped it as classified evidence of your readiness. Your life is not a random collection of pain. It is a sealed dossier of divine preparation, and the clearance level just changed. You are no longer in formation, you are being activated. If something just shifted in your chest, if you felt a lock turn that has been rusted shut for years, I need you to subscribe to this channel right now, not for metrics, because the next message is already being calibrated for the exact warfare you will face in your next 90 days, and you need to be positioned to receive it. Share this with the person who surfaced in your mind 40 seconds ago. You know exactly who they are, the one fighting an invisible war, the one carrying a weight nobody around them can detect. Send this before you talk yourself out of it. Their timing is connected to your obedience in this moment. Now place your hand over your chest. Feel the rhythm underneath your palm. That heartbeat is not biology. It is a countdown, and what it has been counting down to is this. Speak this out loud, not in your head, out loud, because your voice carries jurisdiction that your thoughts do not. I am not what happened to me. I am what was built inside me while it was happening. I revoke every contract I signed with the lie that I was disqualified, that I arrived too late, that the window closed while I was still healing, that the best years of my life already passed, and I missed them. That lie has been squatting in my identity, and its eviction is effective immediately. I cancel the spirit of almost. I am done rehearsing my life at the threshold, done warming up for a game I was born to play. Every scar in my history is a security clearance, not a criminal record. Every delay was a forge, not a graveyard. Every season of silence was classified construction, not divine neglect. I did not survive by coincidence. I was preserved by covenant for something specific, and that something activates now. I am not waiting for conditions to improve. I am not waiting for fear to vacate. I am moving in the middle of the shaking because the God who issued the orders is the same God who controls the terrain. I am the solution heaven encrypted and sent into the earth disguised as an ordinary life. My encryption is now decoded, my mission is now visible, and I advance, not when I feel ready, now because readiness was never the requirement, obedience was. And my yes has already been recorded. Heaven did not rise for a single moment. It rose for the entire classified operation of your becoming. Every hidden surrender, every private, yes, every unwitnessed act of alignment that cost you something no one will ever know about. You are walking evidence that the chosen are not the celebrated ones, they are the faithful ones, the ones who kept going when the math said stop. The storm did not reveal your fragility, it revealed your tonnage. You are heavier than everything that tried to bury you, and you always were. Drop the word deployed in the comments. Not as engagement, as enlistment. Let that be the timestamp heaven uses to mark the moment you crossed from formation into mission, from almost into fully operational. And if someone you love is one conversation away from surrendering their assignment, send them this before midnight. Their activation is not behind schedule. It was calibrated for today. They just need someone to deliver the reminder. The standing ovation from heaven is not only for what you have accomplished, it is for the chapters still sealed, still classified, still waiting to be declassified through your obedience in the days ahead. Stay locked in, stay precise, stay dangerous to every assignment of darkness, and never forget that heaven is not merely observing you. It is on its feet, and it has no intention of sitting back down.